All right, we're starting a series. It's called Know Your Soul Abilities series. And this is when we start kind of looking into those modes. We start looking into the very specifics of soul abilities, stuff that you hear about, stuff that maybe I know from first-person accounts, and I think I can impart a little bit of my truth in there for you. So if you're looking to investigate, where do I go? Where do I start playing? Where do I start experimenting? This series will help you dabble in a little bit, know a little bit of each kind of soul ability that you can tap into, that you can work on, that you can play with. And I can also impart a little bit of my truth in there, whether it's first account experience or stuff that is actually going to be told to us by other people. That's going to be a part of the series as well. And we're going to start off with my favorite thing. And I've held off on this and I'm going to hold off more. But in this episode, we are going to talk about a soul ability that I consider a mode. So modes would be those bigger umbrella soul abilities like your intuition, your mediumship, your psychic, and your healing. These are the bigger umbrella modes. And then there's specifics in there that we're going to dive into. We're going to kind of dissect in this big giant world of soul abilities. I want to touch on everything, but I am picking just to select, 10, 12, 15, I don't know, soul abilities to talk about. But the first thing is mediumship. So let's get started on this soul ability, this mode, mediumship. And that starts now on NextGEN Medium, the podcast. Hey there, Sarah with you. I am the founder of NextGEN Medium, the website. I also put together this podcast. That's me. This podcast and a vlog and a blog, and it's all meant to get you started on your journey of uncovering, discovering, exploring your soul abilities, your soul senses. So I discovered this stuff for myself only just a couple years ago in my early 30s. Since I've uncovered it, it's just like this whole new world, this new way of existing. My whole world has changed, and I can't believe that I didn't know about this stuff for so long. And so I really do believe that everybody has this stuff. It's just we don't know how to tap into it, how to get going with it, where to start. And so I wanted to start this stuff to help impart what I've learned, but also raise awareness that, hey, I went this long without knowing that I could tap into this stuff, and now I talk about it, and I do readings, and I just can't imagine how I could live my life not knowing this stuff, but it's really how it all went down. So you can resonate with that. That's why you're listening. And now we're kicking off the Know Your Soul Abilities series. In the past, this was called Know Your Psychic Abilities series. Know Your Psychic, I don't know. I can't remember what I called it, but with time, I realized, you know what, I need to broaden this to say soul abilities and not just psychic, because words are hard when it comes to this genre, because everybody's got a different way of saying things or different meanings with what they're saying. So it's really hard to have a consistent vocabulary with things. And with time, I've realized, you know what, I got to call it soul abilities. This whole series is soul abilities. And it's the way you take in your soul senses. You are using a soul ability. And there are so many different ways to use your soul abilities that translates to psychic skills or intuitive skills or healing or mediumship. And it's still something I'm trying to discern for myself years into this, doing readings with people. Honestly, having definitions really doesn't impede my process, but I want to understand how it works. And so I had to discern, and I've come to a place where, okay, I understand soul abilities can encompass all these things. So let's talk about these things. But everyone has access to their soul abilities. Some people may be able to access more abilities than others. Maybe they need to work a little bit harder on abilities, just like reading. Some people pick it up really well. Some people don't. Just like math. Some people are really good at it. I am not. Some people, they have high skills in multiple abilities or modes. I think how you grow up also adds to how open you are to these abilities, how you already work with these abilities. I do think there could be a genetic component as well when it comes to soul abilities and what you're strong at and maybe what you got to work harder at. But either way, we're uncovering the unknown right now. And one way that we can do that is kind of investigating what soul abilities are. And so this episode, we're focusing on mediumship. And let's dive into that because this is probably my favorite soul ability, my favorite mode, that big umbrella of mediumship. So what is mediumship? Mediumship is often used to connect loved ones, those here in their bodies on Earth, and connecting them with those without their bodies in the spirit world. Another way that people talk about this soul ability is using, talking to dead people. And this kind of stems from that movie with that kid and Bruce Willis and I talk to dead people, That's kind of our cultural way of understanding it. But there are lots of ways that we say dead people. Another way to say that is discarnates, so without the body. Spirits. I think this is kind of ghosty to me, so I get kind of about that. We have enough to deal with. We don't need to add ghosts in there. Otherworldly entities. But I still call them people. People are things with bodies, however, so that makes it kind of confusing. But some mediums, they may connect with guides, archangels, your grandmother, your dog, Jesus. But there's a lot of connecting to these energetic beings that we can't see. And that's where mediumship does its thing. Mediumship is all about being a messenger, being an interpreter. One is able to connect with these otherworldly entities using the soul senses. Information is obtained, it's deciphered, and it's passed along to the in-body person intended to receive the message. Okay, so we got dead people, we got messages, we got interpreting, and that's mediumship. So what psychic senses, soul senses are used when you're doing mediumship? This can be anything and everything. What is most useful is multiple skills. You might not know at this point, if you're just starting out, what all your skills are, but with time, and I think mediumship really helped me understand all of what I got, because I would sit and do meditations. And I remember one specifically where I was connecting, and it actually really got the ball rolling for me when it came to accepting my abilities, was a meditation session I had, and I was connecting with my husband's grandfather who had passed away a few years ago. I was seeing him in my mind's eye, and he was showing me a lot of visuals, giving me some feelings, showing me a lot of different kinds of information. And we kept this conversation going, and he made me feel good. That's one thing that really just astounds me with mediumship, is how these entities I can't touch, how they can influence and make me feel things, emotions. It's really incredible. But it was through this experience I had of this mental conversation with my husband's grandfather who had passed years ago, where he gave me lots of information. After my meditation, I wrote everything that I could remember that we were talking about, that I saw, that I felt. I wrote it all down. After I wrote it down, I could distinguish, like, okay, this was visual, so that's clairvoyance. This piece of information was a knowing, so that's claircognizance. I just knew it was a foreign coin that he was flipping in his pocket. It was just something I knew. And so deciphering what senses were used and being able to go to my clairs chart, which I do have on my blog at nextgenmedium.com, so you can fish through and be like, does this connect to what I experienced? Does this make any sense with the experience I had? When I was able to do that, then I could get a full scope of what I actually got. Sometimes knowing the definitions when you're going into this work helps you decipher it a little bit quicker, but you got to experience it to know what exactly you have. And doing it when you're doing a meditation, especially, with mediumship, it gives you time to play, to experiment, to feel comfortable where you're not feeling like someone's right in front of you. But I was able to take this information and I went to my husband's mother and I said, hey, I did a meditation and I'm kind of playing around with this stuff. So could you tell me if any of this makes sense to you? And I went through the list. I didn't go through the whole list because I was very doubty of the whole thing. Like, this wasn't for real, was it? But she was able to confirm, yes, when I was growing up, he had a British coin that he would flip in his pocket. And they don't even make this coin anymore, but that's what he flipped around in his pocket. And yes, we had a kitten named Dusty. It was the only cat I ever owned. And so these were the things she was giving me confirmations on that I had no idea beforehand, before doing the meditation. And it was through this experience that I realized that I was capable of mediumship, because the information that was being confirmed truly was stuff that I had no idea about. I was also able to get a better picture of the soul senses that I have, that I was using in that meditation. It was mediumship. It was using my soul senses of claircognizance, clairvoyance, being able to feel emotion. Yeah, so it really helped solidify that this was something I could do. And it was a meditation, and I didn't feel like someone was watching me or that I had to perform. It was in the comfort of my own soulness by myself. But I was being joined by my husband's grandfather. Thank you, David Danielson. You did a good job, Dave. And I always think back on this and it just feels like, oh my gosh, what a monumental moment that was for me to confirm this stuff and feel like, oh my God, this is for real. So when it comes to these dominant senses, it really can be anything when it comes to the clairs. Now, if we're talking about in the future information, that's information for it to be included in mediumship. That would be information that needs to be supplied by the person in spirit that you are connecting with. Another thing I'll notice is that I will get psychic stuff about that person that I'm connecting with in spirit. I'll be able to see things that happen to them. I can even feel their personality, get a sense of their personality through my intuition. So mediumship actually takes in not just soul senses as part of its working, but also those other soul abilities. Those can infiltrate as well. And sometimes it gets so messy to try to come up with all of these vocabulary, all these terminology things as to what is exactly happening during a mediumship session for me, that it's like, you know what? I'm just going to do my thing and whatever happens is going to happen. But here I am trying to talk about it and it's like, it's so complicated. But when it's happening, it's not. It really has no complication to it other than just opening up and trusting what's coming in. So one thing throughout this series that I'm going to be pummeling you with is how to get to the place, how to develop your soul abilities, how to get to that place. And I get very general with it. I'm going to be very general with it because part of me doesn't want to guide you too much because I don't want you to rely on a procedural process. I want you to kind of develop getting yourself in that zone by yourself. But I figure there's a couple of things that I can throw out there where I'm not leading too much because really you're the one that is taking the reins here, but I'm just beside you holding your hand a little bit. Ways that I would recommend for you to develop your mediumship skills. In my story of developing, or that time that I took in information from my husband's grandfather, that time that I wrote down that information, that time that I went to my husband's mom and she confirmed all that stuff, it came from a meditation. So I'm going to tell you to meditate. Now, what happens with meditation is you build this baseline of what it feels like to be in your body, to pay attention to different places in your body, to know what it's like to have your awareness to be just in your mental state. Because being in that place, understanding that baseline where meditation puts you, where your focus and awareness is inside you or maybe around you, but not distracted, you're focused. Understanding that baseline is really what you're working off of, because when you're getting messaging, that's the abnormal stuff that is messaging that you need to discern that is incoming information. So if you understand your baseline, you know what's your norm. And then what's coming in, that messaging, you recognize that as not normal. So this must be messaging. Does that make sense? I hope so. And if you need help with that, you can go to my website, nextgenmedium.com. I got a couple videos to help you get to that place of meditation, to start practicing where that meditation place is. And I've got a guided meditation for you for white light meditation. This is just a way to practice. I also have another meditation of energy protection. These are both good for people who need to recharge. Also good for when you are a very empathetic person and you need to start visualizing the boundaries that you need to set. So you can start there. I've got a blog on this as well for the meditation stuff. So you can check out the videos and the blog at my website, nextgenmedium.com. Next up, during my chatter about my experience with that meditation where I was connecting with my husband's grandfather, I had mentioned that I wrote down my experiences. It was because of a list and definitions of clairs that I was able to discern what clairs are mine, that I use, that are strong for me, that help me sense this invisible world that's giving me information that I need to interpret and decipher. So I've got a list of clairs for you on my website, nextgenmedium.com, at the blog. This is actually one of the most popular pages on my website because people want these definitions. They want to connect. They want to resonate with these definitions. If you don't resonate with these definitions, then I would say that that's probably an experience you haven't had, but doesn't mean that you won't experience it. But if you're doing your meditations, you're taking in information, write down what's happening. And then you can go to this list and be like, okay, I think that's mine. I think that's mine. And with time, you start recognizing which clairs are yours. So check that out at nextgenmedium.com/blog. And now for some exercise tips when you're looking to explore your mediumship. These are some tips I have for you when you're getting your psychic, intuitive, mediumship exercises underway, you're exploring. And the tips I have for you is going to be the same for all these soul abilities, knowing these soul abilities. One is to keep an open mind. Now, we say that, but it's really hard when we're conditioned to believe what possibilities are, what boundaries are. But this is a place of no boundaries. Like, this is the sky's the limit. It's boundless. So as much of an open mind as you can keep will allow for any information to come through. If you believe it's not true, if you believe that you can't, great example of this actually is one particular medium who brought this up, Charlie Kelly, about this experience he has when he goes and gets readings from mediums. His sister never comes through. And so part of that is because the medium isn't open enough to believe that this young man, Charlie Kelly, could have a sister who passed. Like, that is a young person in spirit. Is the medium open to someone being that young, being in spirit, first of all, but also this person in front of them having a young person in spirit for themselves? So we got a couple blocks there that mediums have to overcome in order to be open to possibility and truth and messaging. So keeping an open mind, that is like super integral to anything you do with your soul abilities and soul senses. Meditation, of course, is going to be one of my tips that develops your baseline, develops the foundation of what you work off of, because you got to compare. This is my baseline. Now what's coming in that is not normal? Okay. Next is to observe Now, part of this step is taking in what's given to you. It's not making something. It's not judging what's coming through. That's the big one. Don't judge. Don't dismiss. Observe. Just take it in, move along. And lastly, documentation. This is like super key to how I started discovering and uncovering and exploring. Was I wrote down everything that happened, from synchronicities to psychic events to dreams and this, you can really get a full scope of where your soul abilities come in, and you have no idea sometimes the magnitude that it infiltrates your life. So documentation is super, super key. Now, I've talked about the ego before, and I would ask you to revisit it again. Go to my blog post at nextgenmedium.com, identifying ego in your messaging, because we need to start becoming familiar with this entity that is our ego. We need to not take the ego personal. We need to have a separation of it in order for us to do our job well. Doing your job well means your ego needs to chill out sometimes. So I would ask you to listen to that episode here on my podcast, which I think was an episode or two ago. I would also, if you need to see it written out, I'm one of those people. I get it. Go to my nextgenmedium.com blog, and it's all written out there for you to revisit and go over for yourself. At my blog, speaking of my blog, nextgenmedium.com/blog, I have a get there exercise for you to check out. Now, this was an exercise that I tried out when I did a workshop with John Holland, who is a psychic medium up here in New England. So full credit goes to John with this. And so I write out this exercise where it basically is shutting off outside stimulus by just closing your eyes, taking some breaths in to kind of center and get yourself comfy. And then it's sort of a shift exercise. So where to put your focus when you are trying to get to that place of messaging. And so you can check out this exercise on my blog at nextgenmedium.com. Also, on that same blog post, I have web resources for more on mediumship, Facebook groups, Reddit groups. I have videos for you to check out. Just know that all these things that I'm like, hey, check this out. Nobody probably knows that I've shared this stuff. So if you think I'm getting a kickback for it, I am not. These are resources that I've gone through that I was like, okay, this would be good for people. Even the videos, like, I'm not going to share any video. I want to make sure that I resonate with the video. So I've looked through all these and I'm like, okay, these are good resources for everybody. Even includes Charlie Kelly, who I talked about earlier, for some of the stuff. Charlie's great if you really want to dive into mediumship. So check that out at nextgenmedium.com/blog. And yeah, all the resources you need will be right there and everything I've talked about, including that get there exercise. So that does it for this episode of Next Gen Medium, the podcast, kicking off our Know the Soul Abilities series with mediumship. I love mediumship, and it's going to be a while until we start talking about mediumship, but know that this is one of my favorites, and I would highly encourage you to do your own meditation. Sit in solitude, have nobody around, and try to connect with someone who's passed on, and then see if that information can be confirmed by people, because you might start uncovering some amazing truths about your abilities, about what you can do, and it could be a lot easier than you realize. So that does it for this episode of Next Gen Medium, the podcast. Go to my website, nextgenmedium.com, to check out the blog posts associated with this podcast, where it has all the resources and stuff that I talked about. You can also sign up to get a consult or a reading, and you can flip through my calendar, see what works best for you. And like I said, nextgenmedium.com, that's where my blog is, that's where my vlog is, and other podcast episodes as well. You can also add your name to get to my email list to get emails about upcoming Next Gen Medium stuff, like educational stuff, contests for free readings, and a whole lot more. Like me on Facebook, like me on Instagram and Pinterest. And until next time, have a pleasant rest of your day. Be safe, and I'll chat with you later. See ya. Bye.